Hey, friends. Welcome to the Self-Love Strong podcast. I'm super excited you guys are here because we have an amazing guest. We have Andrea Hunt. She helps ambitious professionals and entrepreneurs and personal growth leaders break free from fear, overthinking, and self-sabotage so they can move forward with confidence. Through powerful mindset coaching and EF tapping techniques, guides clients who feel stuck from procrastination, playing small and struggling with perfectionism, take action without overwhelm. Her clients are ready for change. They want to feel confident, capable, and in control to create real success without burnout and step into their full potential. Andrea empowers them to overcome doubt and fear so they can make meaningful progress in ways that feel exciting, aligned, and excited you guys are here. The supers are here.
Thank you so much. I'm so glad to be here.
All the way from Munich, Germany. Woo!
Yep. Where it's 9:20 p.m.
Whew, thank you. That's dedication right here. And we're at 2 p.m. So what inspired your journey into coaching and ETF tapping?
So it was actually something that I had been thinking about for quite a while. I come from a marketing background, and I was working for different companies. And during the pandemic, like many people across the world, I lost my job. And of course, I felt horrible. It was like an ego bash, and I was totally panicked, wondering what I was going to do with myself. And then I kind of started realizing that I had an opportunity now to do whatever I wanted with my life. And I was like, well, maybe this is the time actually that I can get my coaching certification. It was locked down and we had to be at home anyway. So I was like, I'm going to make good use of my time. So I set up, my online coaching and everything during the pandemic, during lockdown. And the EFT part was just something that I integrated kind of naturally because I've been doing it by myself now for like 12 years. And it would be something that in my coaching, call with clients, they would be really stressed or, anxious about something or really fearful. And I would say if I could just do, 10 minutes of EFT tapping, I know that I could calm them down and get them to a grounded and calm place. So I got certified in that. And so that's how I've managed to integrate these two, like transformational coaching and EFT, which is a really, really powerful combo.
Wow, that is awesome. I know many times, especially with the pandemic, like you said, you lost the major transition in itself. And I like how in that challenge, you decided that, hey, maybe I can do something I'm a little bit more passionate about. So how did your own experience, maybe even imposter syndrome, lead you to diving into this work?
Well, because I've done so much personal growth on myself. This might surprise everybody, but I am definitely far from perfect. So my journey, I had a lot of things. I think a lot of self-doubt. Every kind of step forward with confidence in my life was something that I always felt completely, terrified to do. It always ended up being the best thing that I had done for myself, but I was terrified doing it. And once I was able to, use EFT tapping to kind of take small steps forward. And then as I did that, manage the fear, manage the anxiety, manage all of the what ifs, what if this happens? And what if everybody criticizes me? And what if, nobody takes me seriously? All of these things that come up when we try to do something new or get outside of our comfort zones. So this is what I found, that actually, because I've been working on, these things, I'm really good at helping other people to, not only see their value, but realize that they do have what it takes to move forward and make powerful change in their life, especially with bigger goals and, when they have more motivation to do things.
Oh, man, I love that, Angela. We're talking about, none of us are perfect and we're all working through something. But I think many times when we find ourselves in those struggles, we count ourselves, through those challenges. But I love how you're like, I use my story and my challenge as an opportunity, not only to apply what the techniques that I'm using, but be that role model that, hey, this works because it works for me.
Exactly. Because I think one of the important things about, being confident is like confidence is not like a light switch. It's a lot of the times it's like going to the gym. We have to build up this muscle. We don't just go to the gym, do a sit up and say, okay, where's my six pack? So it's something that takes, dedication and moving yourself forward, pushing yourself bit by bit, creating new evidence in yourself that you can be like, okay, you know what? I did handle that. And I've overcome a lot of things. I've, handled a lot of things, and I can always keep, growing and expanding as a person, professionally or personally, whatever.
Oh, wow, that is awesome. I really love that we can progress, in those little ways. It's awesome. So how has, an international, right? How has your international journey, influenced your coaching program? I imagine you're coming from different scopes of life, which is awesome, with internationally.
I think one of the biggest things that has influenced, I think, created me as a person that has helped me feel capable is I moved to China when I was 28 after a breakup where I just needed to like get out of get out of my old life and just kind of start over. And I found a job teaching English in China. So I got over there and suddenly I was just like, what have I done? Like, was this way too far, Andrea? Like, what are you doing? But actually, through putting myself in that situation where I had to be adaptive, I had to be capable, I had to try new things, I had to meet new people. I think being able to handle that situation taught me that I can really always pivot and adjust things in my life. And it also taught me that you don't ever need to stay stuck. There's always something that you can do. It doesn't have to be moving to China, by the way. There are, much smaller steps that you can take, whether it's just a morning routine or maybe, gratitude, or maybe just doing one thing new every day to challenge yourself, but it's to always be able to prove to yourself that if you don't like where you are, you don't have to stay there. You can always do something to change it. And that one thing can often make a huge difference in your life. So I think the international experience in terms of how I view myself as a person, how I view myself in the world, and also how I view, other people and cultures. And it helped me really see more of the commonalities between people and culture and religions and everything like that than differences. And I really appreciate that perspective that I got.
Oh, wow. I love that. I love what you said there, that you're not really stuck. And I think many times we find ourselves, like you said, in a challenging position. But I love how you kind of removed yourself and recalibrated. But I love how you said you're not stuck. And I think in many ways, people, this or jobs and relationships, you feel stuck. But I love that you had the power to choose where you're at and to remove yourself at the same time. And it's those little choices that really can change your life. I think that's such an awesome thing. So, since you're, like you said, you went from what, Munich to, Beijing, right? What is there a running theme? Like, is stress international, would you say, as well?
Absolutely. I mean, I think that different countries maybe have more vacation days and better ways to deal with it maybe than I had in the past. But I think, stress is kind of an international thing. I mean, the world has a lot going on right now. So very few people, unless you're, a Zen monk on top of a mountain, like not watching the news, it's hard to be completely, grounded and,
Yes, 100% agree. So can you share just a pivotal moment when you realized just the power of EFT tapping? What was that pivotal moment where you're like, wow, this is it?
In terms of my own story, I mean, I've definitely used it for everything under the sun. From like, I found it because of when I did my master's, I was an older student. I had completely forgotten how to study. I didn't know how to cram for tests anymore. I'd been, working at a job for 10 years by that time. And so I found it actually because I was so stressed and panicked. I couldn't eat, I couldn't sleep, I couldn't function, because I was just so overwhelmed. And of course, the more, those 3 exams got closer and closer to me, the more I panicked, and I was just a complete mess. And I found a video by Brad Yates that was called Fear and Panic Right Now. And I just literally Googled like what to do about panic. And that came up, and I was like, yep, that's the one. And so I ended up trying it, and it calmed me down, after like 20 minutes. And I was like, this is amazing. So sorry, how was I tying that back in? Can you remind me again? I tried to kind of went off in a tangent there.
But
yeah, okay.
You were stressed out. You were going through a crazy study, and it was really stressing you out. And you Googled the search, yeah.
And then, I've used it for breakups. I've used it, for when I lost my job during COVID, because I was completely panicked as well during that time. And it's not exactly good for your self-esteem to get laid off during a pandemic. It was just like, oh, great. Now I'm in another country. My parents are in the US, hadn't been able to go visit them because of the pandemic. And then I think with clients, like, it's really amazing to me how deep you can go with the work, and especially in terms of beliefs and mindset and clearing the fears that people have to doing things. Because what I've noticed especially is that even though people might be like really ambitious or motivated with a goal, sometimes like, your mindset's trying to protect you. So you might end up, getting all anxious and fearful and creating a website for a year, but then you just can't publish it. Or you want to do a YouTube channel and you've created all the videos and then you can't make it live. You just, and you self-sabotage because of that fear. And usually in that moment, what comes up is like, the fears and resistance of like, being criticized, not being accepted, and all of these kind of things that I found that with my clients, EFT is so helpful to be able to release those and get you into a reframe where you can be like, okay, you know what? Maybe not everybody will like it. Who cares? Is that the end of the world? No, I can't please everybody. I'm not perfect. I don't need to try to be perfect. And why should I let them decide whether or not I have a YouTube channel? Those kind of things. And it's a very powerful reframe when you can care less what everyone else is thinking about what you're doing.
Man, I love that. I love what you said right there. It's that reframe of just realizing that you're worth the situation. But man, I really moment where we're all going through this. The world gets turned upside down, and then you lose your job on top of that. But it's awesome to hear that this is something that you were able to feel that calm and that peace throughout the storm with. So, but somebody coming in here and hearing EFT, what would you say? What is EFT tapping, and how does it really work?
Sure. So EFT stands for the Emotional Freedom Technique. So Gary Craig and Richard Callahan, I think it's Richard Callahan in the 90s, were both into Eastern medicine like acupuncture and acupressure and Chinese medicine. And they realized that if you tap on the points on the face where the acupuncture points are, that it actually calms the nervous system. So it can get you out of the stress, or the fight, flight, or freeze response that you're in. And they started trying it on a lot of different things that like phobias, or, at that time, there were a lot of veterans with PTSD, for example, from like Vietnam and from the Persian Gulf War. And so they realized that they were able to calm the nervous system and to clear the negative memories and clear the emotional charge of these negative memories, so that the person would get to a point where they could discuss it without having that activation in the nervous system and getting re-traumatized. And then, as time went by, you have people like Nick and Jessica Ortner, the brother and sister, and they started just, with an app and doing their tapping summits and using it on everything from, chronic pain to, confidence to feeling good enough. All of these things that most of us, struggle with, at least at some point in our life, in terms of self-esteem and self-love. And it's extremely powerful. And so it's one of those things that you don't necessarily have to understand how it works in order for it to work. But if you're interested online, there are like 100+ scientific studies. Also, the 2 biggest names are Dr. Peter Stapleton and Dr. Dawson Church. You can read like all of the scientific reports they have on anxiety, depression, PTSD, like I said, and phobias.
Yes, yeah, it's awesome. Yes, so I was fortunate enough to run into that book, Tapping Solutions by it was a Nick Ortner, or it was really
Yes,
great.
yes,
I
next book.
practice it and I have used the app, so it really is been a game changer. It was part of my morning routine for a long time, and I was like, man, it was crazy when you hit those little meridian points, that you're just like, whoa, just get you feeling, brings you to the moment. I like to say, harnesses you into the moment. So I really loved it. I really loved it. So why do you feel that so many professionals, struggle with that belief wounding, or going through so many challenges?
I think usually because I think with most people, when you're doing something consistently, like if you've been in the same job for 10 years, you know the ins and outs. It's not scary. You feel smart, you feel competent, you feel like you know what you're doing. But most of the time when you stay in that place, you kind of feel stuck and very limited. You don't feel very challenged. And most of us, like if we're really honest with ourselves, we do kind of want to challenge because otherwise we just get bored. But it's when we try to get outside of our comfort zone
Yeah.
that all of the a lot of times, like things from past experiences, things from childhood that happened, like I always give the example that a lot of times, you might have been in school, and let's say you get up in front of the class and you try to read your paper, and let's say you mess up a word and the teacher criticizes you in front of the whole class. Everybody laughs at you, and so then you just got the belief it's not safe to be seen, it's not safe to be heard, and if I try to shine or put myself out there, I'm going to get judged and criticized. And of course, we're social human beings. We don't want to
Yeah.
do things that disrupt, like, and we also want to be liked and everything. So it might be that, 20, 30 years later, you're in the office and your boss is like, okay, you have to give the client presentation, and you just freeze up because you're absolutely petrified of public speaking because of something that happened to you when you were a child, because your brain is always kind of looking for similar patterns, and it sees this like as a possible threat where you could be
Yeah.
ridiculed, criticized, or whatever. And that's where tapping is so important, because you can do it beforehand, to really kind of ground yourself, calm yourself, do visualizations with the tapping to imagine the presentation going well, knocking it out of the park, as I say, like feeling good, feeling confident, and having a positive response, so that when you go in there, you have that expectation instead of the anxiety and fear, going like, oh, what if you mess up? What if you mispronounce something? What if they're bored? What if they fall asleep? Like all of the ways that our mind starts to spin things, right?
Man, it's so true. Like, yeah, you find yourself in those situations, like, those, you don't realize how those past situations that always hold you in the present. And you find those, like you said, those you always turn back to those old habits of holding yourself back, or, hesitating instead of taking that action. So how does perfectionism and overthinking keep people really stuck?
The biggest thing that I've seen is that with perfectionism, you don't want to start because, like, for example, I've
Yeah.
had clients who, they really wanted to do like a salsa class, okay, but they only have time once a week to do it on Mondays.
Yeah.
So they know that they'll never get good at it because they don't have the time to invest in it. So they just go, okay, I'm just not going to do it. Like, I'm not going to be any good. It's just like, okay, but would you have a good time? Well, yeah. Okay, well, so why would you deny yourself that just because, okay, you're not going to be a professional salsa dancer? Maybe you're not. Maybe that's not your thing, but it doesn't mean that you shouldn't
Yeah.
allow yourself to have a good time, even if you're not good at it, you know? And the other thing that I see is like with perfectionism, it's like like I said, creating a whole website and being like, oh, just one more thing. Just one more thing. And so you you keep it in a state where it's never perfect enough that you can actually publish it. So you get to just say, well, it's not ready, it's not ready. I've seen people spend years not finishing something, but in the real problem behind it is that they're afraid that, okay, what if it's not perfect? How are people going to perceive me if it's not perfect? And at the end of the day, nothing is perfect, and if the website's not perfect, you can always update it, you can always change it. The text copy is not permanent, but we have to allow ourselves that compassion, that flexibility to learn and grow. Nobody's perfect the first time doing anything, usually. usually,
Yes, I really love that because I think, like you said, we always approach things trying to make them perfect, and then almost like you said, like using that as an excuse of why I'm not going to, because it's not perfect yet. So you get so close, you do all the work, you maybe do all the research, but then you find yourself not finishing or taking action because, like you said, you're not giving yourself that grace to start new. You know, I really love
Yeah.
that you said that's that decision you make. Like, hey, nobody's really perfect, and I love how you said that because I think many times we look at celebrities and we look at people who've gotten there. I think social media glorifies the end result, but not the starting point. If we don't ever hear about glorifying the beginning of something, where it's always the end result is what matters, But I think, like you said, it takes courage, and it's it's not going to be pretty, but you can always get better along the way.
Absolutely. I mean, and it's like, really, whose blog is like number one in the first week, like whose blog has the best one that they've ever read, or like, your first podcast, is it as great as, 2 to 3 years down the road? Of course not, because you learn and you adjust and you get better and better. It's just how everything is, but we have to give ourselves that grace and be able to say, like, look, here's where I started, here's where I am now. And I think that's actually kind of exciting when you can see how far you've come and be able to be proud of yourself that, how much you were able to learn and grow in that process.
Yes, yes, I love that. I love that. So what are some strategies you use to help your clients move past that fear and take that action when they're in that procrastination stage?
So there's actually very specific tapping, sequences that you can do for that. I usually like to I like to start with a life audit. So people can look at, around 4 or 5 different areas of their life that they prioritize, like say, like, health and mental health, like career, finance, and let's say connections. And that includes relationships, friends, family, everything like that. And then to rate themselves and see, like, okay, how are you doing right now? Because usually when we really look at it, maybe we're doing fine in our work. Maybe we're like, making a lot of money or something, but then we're neglecting our health because we're working too much and we're not exercising. We're eating like DoorDash every night, like, or maybe we're, really good with our health and stuff like that, but then maybe we're not able to, I don't know, find situations where we can make good income and stuff like that. So figuring out how you can bring different areas of your life into balance is really important. And once the person has done that, you can be like, okay, so what are your goals? Where would you like to improve in this area? And then usually the very like triggering question is like, okay, so why haven't you done that yet? Because usually they have things that they've been wanting to do for like a while. And when you really get down to it, like, okay, so what's stopping you? And at first they're like, okay, yeah, well, my kids and like, and everybody else that's like affecting them. But a lot of times when it really gets down to it, it's a lot of fear and resistance that we have within ourselves. And when you can figure out what your limiting beliefs are, and a good way to kind of figure that out, like on your own. I mean, I do offer workshops in this, but for example, like pay attention to your I am statements, the statements where you're like, I'm lazy, I procrastinate, because this is like, these are habits that you're kind of analyzing yourself with this identity. And the problem with that is that you limit yourself by saying that, instead of like, if you just say like, I'm bad at math. Okay, well, that's what you believe. You're going to go around perceiving everything to validate that. Whereas if you're like, okay, sometimes math takes me longer, but I'm open to learning new ways to do that. And then with the EFT, the way that it works is we first start with the negative round. And this is the way for you to really get honest and articulate how you feel. So a lot of times it might look like, even though I'm terrified to launch my website, deeply, completely love and accept myself. I am terrified to launch my website. I'm afraid everyone's going to laugh at me. They're going to tell me it's terrible. I'll be humiliated. I'll never be able to go outside and see my friends again, and then you let it out and you say everything as ridiculous as it sounds. It does not matter, because you need to be able to get it out of your system and be honest with yourself about how you feel. And then you kind of go and measure yourself and see if, if the intensity has gone down. And then you can start reframing everything like, okay, I mean, what if it's not a perfect website? Okay, what does that really matter? Like, is that the end of the world for me? Probably not, So maybe I should do this anyway, because why should I give other people the power to decide whether I launch my website? It's my website. It's my power. I decide. And you kind of keep with those positive affirmations, because with the tapping, they are, it's easier to believe them. Because what most people find when they do affirmations is like, they go and look in the mirror and they're like, I'm good enough, I'm smart enough, and I'm awesome. But if you're really new to that, a lot of people are like, they look at their mirror and they're like, that's not what I think at all. Like, maybe I worry I'm not enough or too much, or, whatever. And with the tapping, you can start reframing it to feel more real, or at least being open to change, or being willing to look at something differently, or being willing to accept yourself. It's very powerful.
Yes, I love that. I love how that whole cycle really starts with taking inventory on where you are. I think that's such a powerful moment. I think many times we're looking to change things, but it's like if you don't really reflect and identify where you're at, it's really hard to get to where you want to be. I think it's many times we find solutions just to put a band-aid on it, but I love it. It's like it's really identify where you're at, identify goals, and we'll reframe everything to get you to where you want to be. I really love that strategy where it's really getting down to the nitty-gritty and identifying where you're at. That's so awesome. So
I think most of the time
is that how we're getting in there. So how can people, again, I would love what you're going to say. I want to hear what you're going to say. Sorry.
Oh, I'm sorry. I was just saying, like, I think a lot of times we're afraid to be honest with ourselves about how we feel. We go around telling everybody we're fine, I'm just fine, and inside we're panicking and we're afraid, or we're sad or whatever, because we don't like admitting those weaker parts of ourselves, or being perceived as weak, not, you know what I mean? Like, we have all of these hangups. And so in order to clear these things, we have to really get honest. And that can be really an interesting process for some people, because when it comes down to them, they might be angry and never let themselves be angry. They might be sad, but they act, really positive and happy, but it's not really real. They just don't want to be problematic and negative. And when you allow them to really feel, that is when they are truly able to transform things and reframe, because they were honest with their own feelings and how they felt about it.
Oh man, that is so powerful. Like you say, it is really a humbling moment when you have to be honest with yourself. Who realistically wants to identify their own faults? Like you said, want to speak about your weakness. But I think, like you said, it's really where the real change happens, is when you start to identify back in where you're at. So how would you say, somebody who's listening to this, how can listeners start shifting from their self-doubt to that empowerment?
I think the first thing is being able to identify what are the limiting beliefs that you have about yourself. Like, when you describe, positive aspects of yourself, like, I'm the kind of person who does what, I am, kind, I am helpful, whatever. And then look at the negative ways that you might talk about yourself, because you might be like, I'm not good at math, I'm lazy, I'm a procrastinator, like any of those I am statements, because most of the times you don't think about them because you're so used to kind of talking that way about yourself. And I think one of the important things to realize is also we talk about ourselves often very negatively, in a way that we would not talk about other people. We wouldn't talk to our friends about that and say, like, if your friend's tried to get a job and you say, oh, well, you're not good enough for that job anyway, why would you do that? And yet a lot of times the way that we talk about ourselves is really critical and not very helpful. So you always have to ask, like, is the way that I'm talking to myself, is that helping or is that hurting? Because once we can kind of be aware of it, and sometimes it really is catching yourself in the moment of being like, I want to do this, but what is the but? Is it like, but, oh, if I applied for the job, they would never look at it,
Mm.
but they might. It's like with a lot of things, like we forget that there's the other 50% of the possibility that it could actually go our way because we're so programmed sometimes to automatically assume the worst. I know this is something that I struggled with for many, many years of like, oh, why bother? Like, why, why bother doing this? It's not going to work. I can't do it. I don't know anything about that. And the reality is like when we start to kind of open ourselves up to the possibility that we can change and we can learn new things. We're always growing and evolving.
Yes.
And just because we're not great at something now doesn't mean we can't learn it. Like, I mean, now everything is online. We can literally learn anything that we want, including courses from like MIT, they're free. So it's like, if you want to learn, there's always a way for us to do that so that we do feel good enough and competent.
Yes, that's so true. I really love how you talk about that reflection of what are those I am statements. I think it's so powerful and easily underlooked because, like you said, we find ourselves talking about ourselves in ways, or your friend about that way down, like you said, like I'm not good enough, or maybe I'm too afraid, or you're breaking yourself down, but not really building yourself up. Taking ownership of those words and realizing those statements have power. Your words do have power in the outcome of who you're becoming.
Absolutely.
But I love
So we always have to be very
that you
careful.
have the power to change. That's so awesome. Yeah, it's so powerful and scary at the same time. Really makes you wonder, like, what am I letting in? Or what I am statements am I allowing? The things that I'm accepting from other people. Like they're like, you're this, and you're just taking it as who you are.
Absolutely. I mean, what comes to mind is I don't know if you ever read about it, but there was a Japanese scientist and he did this. I think it was with plants and it was in a school and they were trying to show like the effects of bullying. Maybe it wasn't a Japanese one, but anyway, so they had one of the plants and the students would say like, oh, you're so beautiful. Like, what a wonderful plant. Like we love you and all of these positive things. And it was just like blooming and flourishing and really growing. And then the other one, they were saying like mean things to it. And it was like, it looked, all dead and decrepit and everything like that. And they wanted to illustrate like just how powerful words are in terms of energy. And so it's like, we are no different, and have to be careful with that.
Wow, I love that. I love that the power of your words do matter. So, is there any simple EFT exercises listeners can try right now?
Sure. I always think the easiest one, like if you don't know anything about EFT, if you just want to know something simple and maybe you're stressed out, you can, here on the collarbone, like this little space, you can just tap like with both hands. And let's say you're just in a stressful situation. Let's say you can just go sit on a park bench or like, you're on the bus or you're in the car in traffic or whatever. And you breathe in through your nose and out through your mouth like this. So you're breathing in for 3 and out for 3. And if you sit and you do this 10 times, that is a really good way just in 5 minutes to kind of calm your nervous system and ground yourself, if you've got to go into an important meeting or something like that. And then I always say like, now we're very lucky that we have a lot of different resources online. You can go onto YouTube. I have a channel. There's lots of people that have channels. And it allows you to just type in like EFT stress relief or EFT insomnia, EFT. I've seen it for everything possible. Or the tapping solution app, like you suggested. There's a free version and then there's a paid version. But I know that the paid version, you can try it for 2 weeks, I think, and see if you like it. But it's very helpful just to like see if it works. And for a lot of times, I know that people might not really understand why it works, and so they don't want to try it, but then they're really stressed, and then they try it, and then it works.
So readily accessible. Like when you're thinking like, I need to, because for me, I have an active mind, and so meditating is sitting there, but I love the activeness of tapping. Like I feel like, I'm in the moment. It really grounds me, like you said. Like when you're doing, that's why I always love tapping, is because when you do, it's like you're in that moment. It's like you're not going anywhere. It's just simple. I mean, it's just so powerful. I love it.
Absolutely. And
So
I think
what
with
is your biggest piece of advice from some? Oh, no, I'm sorry. I don't want to interrupt you now. I want to hear what you're going to say. Please say it.
I'm sorry, that was a slight delay, and then I just launched into that. I was just saying that the reason I think that I was attracted to EFTs because I'm kind of a hyper person. I'm a very mentally active person. And if I don't channel that and ground myself in some ways, my brain could just spin out of control. And for me, the active part of tapping, it's a way, first of all, to focus, but also to distract from the bigger problem that's happening at the moment. So it's a way to really condense everything into something that I feel in control of, which is really, really helpful. And I know a lot of people have trouble meditating. It's like a learning curve. It's amazing once you can do it, but it has a big learning curve, and it's not instant that you just figure it out. Sorry to interrupt.
No, and that's exactly how I feel. I have that active mind. So it's like when you get me in the corner, my mind just starts swirling over everything. And by the time I'm thinking about what I'm ordering for dinner in the middle of meditation.
Yeah.
So what's your biggest piece of advice for someone ready to break free from fear and procrastination?
So the procrastination, I mean, that's one that, to be honest, works better with a practitioner. I mean, I just know from experience, but I mean, you can definitely.
Yeah, that's good. Yes.
You can definitely, try to do it by yourself. I mean, by what is it that you need to do? Take out a calendar, put the date there, and see how you feel about it, what comes up, and then you can, start tapping on it. But usually, when it's something a bit deeper, which usually it is, it's not just you being lazy or whatever. It's usually tied to something else that's better with a practitioner. But I think there's definitely videos that you can use to see if you're able to do it yourself, because if you are, fantastic. The tapping will be able to get you also more motivated, but also release the resistance, because sometimes there's a part of us that's rebelling and we don't want to do it because, somebody else made us do it. Or it's our teacher wants us to do something, or our partner or our boss. And we're like, you can't make me. I don't want to do this. This is stupid. It's not what I want to do. And sometimes we just need to get that out and be like, yeah, before we can be like, okay, this is for work. I need to do this. This is my job. And I just need to buckle up and do it. And then to get yourself out of it. But again, articulate how you honestly feel, because sometimes we're just like, ooh, that, it's Scott in accounting is making me do this. And and we just need to get it out so that you can be like, okay, now that I've complained about it, I've got it out of my system. I can be an adult and do the task.
Yes, I love that. Like you said that, I think many times we find ourselves in procrastination and fear, and we don't ask for help. But I love how you said, just go to a practitioner. You're going to it's okay to ask for help. And I think many times we put ourselves in this bubble, like I'm going through this challenge and I need to go through it alone. But I love how you said, it's time to ask for help. Ask those practitioners, like people like you who know what they're doing, and to help you and guide you along that path, that you don't have to do it alone. I love that.
Absolutely. I mean, I can't tell you how many times I've had coaches or practitioners or whatever help me with something that I think sometimes you can do it yourself. You can read about it. Sometimes you can learn about something yourself. And then other times you're like, okay, I've been doing it by myself and it's just not getting me the results that I needed to have, or it's taking me too long, and I just want somebody who knows what they're doing to help me move forward. I know I could do it, but I need help, you know. And there's nothing wrong with that.
Yeah. I love that. I love that. Like, like you said, like I am a practitioner and I need help. And I think that's really good to hear for the, people who are like, man, okay, so we all need help and it's okay to ask for it. Instead, it'll get you there quicker. Many times we find ourselves trying to self-soothe ourselves when we just really need to ask that help to get us that next level and get us that help that we really need. I love that. So, man, you just I'm so thankful for you sharing this message. It's so powerful, and your technique. Learn more about your coaching and your EFT tapping.
Sorry, the question was where?
Oh, no, I'm sorry. Where can people learn more about your coaching and your EFT tapping?
Okay. Well, my website is www.dreahunt.com, DREAHUNT. And on Facebook, I'm Andrea Hunt Coaching. In general, I'm Andrea Hunt Living Deliberately Today is the name of my coaching program. And they can find me on TikTok, on YouTube, on Twitter or X, and Instagram. Yeah, I'm basically everywhere. So you can always keep up with what I'm doing there. I'm also going to be starting in March some group EFT, tapping programs just for like 1 hour. If you've wanted to figure out like, what is EFT? Does this even work on me? You can drop in. It's only an hour long and I'm going to have different topics. I'm just going to try it out this month and see if people like it. And then I do periodically do these limiting belief workshops. This is really powerful because a lot of times we know we have some insecurities. We know that, sometimes there's a pattern that's like, oh, why do I always do this? Like, why do I always procrastinate? Like, why don't I speak up? Why don't I have good boundaries? And I always get involved with certain people or like, whatever. And because once you figure out what your limiting beliefs are and where they're showing up in your life and maybe blocking you from being where you want to be, that's when you can really start to work with the EFT tapping to be able to change them and move forward. And you'll be really shocked at what you can accomplish when you are willing to just move forward and bit by bit instead of trying to do the confidence light switch on and off.
Yes, you guys. And the best part about that is I'm going to put all of Andrea's Hunt, all of her Instagram, all the links. We're going to even put those the links to her trainings as well, so we can make sure this is not the last time you reach out to her. Follow her on all her socials, reach out and tell her thank you for just sharing her knowledge. And don't let this be the last time to connect, because like she said, you don't have to play that confidence switch on and off anymore. You can ask for help. Get the results you're looking to desire. All right, here, friends. So, and make sure that, like Andrea said, you have a choice. You can change your life, but it's up to you. But the best part, you don't have to do it alone. You can ask for help along the way. Take care.